Tom Harkin, thank you for coming on today.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. Now, obviously, this is your first time on the show, but it's not the first time I've spoken about or known you. We saw you doing a podcast in here with Hunter Johnson a while ago. He's a mutual friend of ours, and I must admit I've been a fan of your work for a long time. And it without saying this, I'm honestly not making this up. It's had a massive impact on me without you knowing how big it's been. When I was in this period you're talking about, like when I was starting the show and when things were going for me, and I was trying to work out what I wanted to do and who I was, and like any young man trying to grow up and navigate the world, in about 2017 or 2016, I would say, I stumbled upon a show on ABC called Man Up, and you were on this show, and it was like, for me, being at that age, I think I was probably about 25, and it was the first time I'd ever seen anything on TV. Like, I'd been in an AFL system for sort of 6 years, but it was the first time I'd ever seen anything about like men's health and talking so openly about it. And, you know, we spoke about your organisation at Tomorrow Man, and it was with Gus Warland and his organisation called Gotcha for Life. And it was unbelievable. It spoke about like you going to schools and what you do, spoke about him going to like charity work sites, talking about older men and about mental health and all these sorts of things. And it hit me. And it was the first time I'd ever been like, oh my God, like that is unbelievable. Like, unbelievable. And I cried. Like, I actually cried. It was the first time I cried, and I cry all the time now. But it was the first time I cried, and I was like hiding it, and I was like, oh my God, because it hit me. I'm sure we'll get into all this today, but like, I remember seeing these things and all these conversations we avoid and everything that had built up in my life, and I was like, fuck, I'm one of these kids. I've never had the chance to sort of like talk about my feelings. I can see my dad in these other guys, who's like this hardened old guy that is at this sort of like stage in his life where he's never had mental health or like, you know, been open to talk about mental health, and he, you know, goes to the pub and drinks with his mates, but he's, you know, a very like stoic character, and, you know, he, you know, would never express emotion and these sort of things. And I was just like, I just remember sitting on the couch just being like, what the fuck is going on right now? This is unbelievable. And from that, I actually emailed you. And I've got the email from like 2016.
Oh, wow.
Like up, and basically, you know, the grammar.
Did I reply?
You did. No, you replied.
Amazing.
Yeah, you did. You replied. And the grammar is actually like, I can't even read it because it doesn't make sense. So I'm sure you were just like ciphering through trying to work out what I was saying. But basically just said in there, you know, g'day Tom, like massive fan of like what you've done. Like, I'd love to come meet up with you and have a chat about all these things. Like, I've got a day off from Carlton, da-da-da-da. You replied. I ended up having, in the next email, I actually had to pull out because training got moved. But I'll never forget like that initial chat. And this, and without saying it, like, you know, there's been many factors. That moment probably kickstarted my whole journey into this space.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty hectic.
It is cool.
I just had this really random memory when, because I started at the Reach Foundation, and the Reach Foundation was young people inspiring young people, like a lot of self-development and that kind of stuff. And you'd often be asked, like, what do you want your legacy to be, or like what's a goal that you have? And weirdly, just as you were saying that, I remembered, I don't know how old I was, but I had this strange dream where I was like, I would love at some point to have played a role in positively shaping somebody's life without knowing that it had happened, and to have somebody kind of come and say, hey, we've never met, but something that you've put out there in the world has managed to make that happen, which is cool, you know, when you hear those things. It's humbling. You're like, wow. Yeah,
you've 100% done that. And I think it's cool to be able to tell you that now today, what, like sort of 6-7 years later. It's almost cooler that it wasn't straight away, and the work's been done. And I've always been keeping a close eye on what you're doing. And I say this nearly every week. The boys did a video before taking the piss about things I say. And I always say this episode's a long time in the making. But it actually is a long time in the making. It's probably 6-7 years in the making. So firstly, I just want to thank you because
cheers, man.
Without you, you know, putting yourself out there and you know, doing all the incredible work you do, I don't know where I would be like with that stuff, because I don't think it would have given me, you know, the confidence to do that, and even just the idea to do it. Sometimes you don't know what you're capable of until you see someone else sort of do something. And you admire what they're doing. So congratulations.
Cheers, man. It's hectic. I mean, obviously, like so many people, you know, actually so many people put their asses on the line for that show. It's kind of, interesting how it actually got to be made. But it's like traveling around the country since that show, it's mind-blowing how many people have started something having watched Man Up.
Yeah.
Like, we did this thing with Movember, kind of taking Man Up on the road and running these things in pubs and, breweries around Australia. And so many guys rocked up and were like, here's my T-shirt, me and my mates have started this men's organisation, but there was just so many of them, and I'd never really thought about it that way. It's amazing, like when there's a bat light out there or something and people go, oh, that's speaking, like you were saying, that's speaking to something in me that I didn't really have a place or somebody to talk to, and it's resonating, and it's just kind of lit a fire, and I can do it. It's
contagious. I think it's super contagious. I think we were talking about this before. I don't like stereotyping into males and females, but I think especially in males in this circumstance, it is a part where maybe because in the last sort of 10 years everything's evolved and it's taken time for other people to do things, and then men do get really motivated and seeing other people, like even with the podcast, for example. I'm not sitting here today saying I've inspired people to start podcasts, but I do see so many young kids now sitting down with their best mates, starting a show, talking about like blokes and mental health. I'm like, wow, this is like, that's not me, but it's just what's happening. Like, it is contagious. Ice. And it's like, imagine if I was 16, the last thing I thought I'd sit down with my mate and have a serious conversation about something. So I think it's cool. It's important and it's great, and you're doing great work in that space.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
You like you were saying, like when you watched the show, it just opened something up in you, and you were like, oh, as a kid, I didn't have, necessarily the people to talk to kind of speak to what was going on for you. And you just said again there, you at 16, what was the stuff going on for you as a 16-year-old bloke that you were like, oh, nobody to talk to about this stuff?
Yeah, I think like on reflection now, and you don't probably realise it at the time, but you do, as a young person, get put in, probably like categorised really quickly on who you are and what your interests are and what that role is that you play in the friendship group. And for me, that was quickly being like sporty guy, always had that probably role of like not alpha per se, but like like that,
like
that stereotypical bloke just playing footy, and the goal of sort of playing AFL, and you do shape that role quickly. And I think I definitely fell into that and fell into those stereotypes as a young kid before you realise, fuck, is this actually who I am? Is this what my interests are? And and that sort of stuff. And I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, but I found this really cool thing recently, and it's sort of like, fuck, I wish I knew that. Not I wish I knew it, but it would have been cool to sort of understand this when I was younger. Was like, it spoke about strengths and weaknesses.
Oh yeah.
And it spoke about like this research around strengths and weaknesses. Like a strength is something we perceive that we're like good at. So for example, I use the analogy like footy for me, like because I was quite good at that as a junior, I thought that was a strength because I was good at it.
Yeah.
But a strength now, a way of looking at it is like something that gives you strength. So whether that's like art, and even if I was shit at it, but I really enjoyed it and it strengthened me, that's a strength.
Yeah, I like that.
And like a weakness is something that makes you, weaker. It takes away from you. So maybe, not saying this was me as a kid because I love playing footy, but towards the end, maybe footy was a weakness because it actually drained me of energy. It didn't make me a better person. It wasn't probably what I was meant to be doing. So I think just things like that. As a 16-year-old, I just fell into those, those stereotypes of just like most kids do.
Like a
100%. Lot of young men that you work with.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I relate to that. I mean, I feel like it's such a rough trot as a teenager because you're trying to work out who you are, and from every angle, you're being told what you should be and what the categories are. Like if you think about growing up as a teenager, what life would be like if there was no media whatsoever. So if there wasn't movies and there wasn't all of that kind of stuff, there wasn't sitcoms that kind of showed all the archetypal roles that are played in a group. I don't know. I just feel like maybe people would be heaps better off. You know what I mean? I mean, HBO is sick and, it helps the hours go by. But I just feel like that time in life is brutal. Like, it can be amazing, like heaps of firsts and all of that kind of stuff. Like, I've got some incredible memories from that time. But I wouldn't go back now that, I feel the way that I do. Like I remember agonizing in front of the mirror. I had red hair, still have red hair. It's starting to go.
Strawberry.
Yeah, strawberry.
Oh, yeah.
It was much redder when I was a kid. And I hated it. Like I fucking hated it so bad. And if somebody said like, ranger or, ginger pubes or something like, it was like daggers.
Yeah.
Like just like, that thing that you never wanted anybody to say when you were a kid, because you had blown it up to be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
And so I remember being in Reese's house, my best mate, and I think his mum, I don't know, she wasn't a hairdresser, but she did their hair, like she had a mum that cut hair or whatever, and just burning my scalp off, peroxide, like
blonde.
Yeah, getting peroxide from the reject shop and just layering it on until everything was burning, and then this filthy gel that they used to sell in tubs, like literally like a big tub of it from the reject shop, and I would layer it. You could tap my hair, like you could actually get a sound off the hair. But I would sit in front of the mirror and it would be like agonizing, like is every strand where it needs to be? Like anybody notices, like anybody gives a shit. But it was like just that level of self-consciousness. I would never want to go back to that.
No. No, but the funniest thing is, and again, it's all experience. We put a lot of fancy words on these days around like, crucible moments and stuffs in stories, but realistically, it's just growing up.
Yeah.
And I think we realised that like a really cool part that I loved the other day was like, you're not the main character of everyone else's story.
Yeah.
And it's you live in your own body, you got your own mind. You think that like everyone cares about you as much as they care about themselves. And like at the end of the day, it's like no one, in a harsh way, no one really cares.
Yeah,
so like just do what you want to do. Focus on yourself and not stress too much. It's easier said than done, but I think it's life experience. Talk us through how you got involved in this space. Like how did the birth of Tomorrow Man, Tomorrow Architect, Tomorrow Woman, and Tomorrow People, which is a new one. You've just got fucking Tomorrow Everything.
We need to stop with the tomorrows. I feel like it began with mum. For me. That same kid, Reese, I remember one day we were at school, primary school, and I called him fat pommy something. He was he was from the UK, and we'd been having a fight. We were off and on again mates. And so lived in Frankston, and I went to the shops to head home, and he saw me go off to the shops, went home to his mum, and she told him to come out and sort me out. And so I was driving past the bottom of his court and I didn't see him coming down the hill, but he rode up behind me and he got me off my bike and he clocked me in the face. And it was the first time I'd ever been punched. And so I went home and I distinctly remember walking down the driveway and starting to cry as I got to the little wood ramp to the front door because I knew mum was going to be there. So I'd been holding it, got to the ramp, started crying. Mum opens the door and she took me inside and we sat on this chair in the kitchen and I'll never forget the conversation. Like there was something that kind of clicked in my head where she got me to unpack the whole thing. She was like, what happened? How did it lead up? What did you say? What do you reckon that made him feel? What do you reckon he decided to do with that feeling? And something clicked for me that it wasn't about me, that I had done something to him that had kind of built a pain in him and he took it out on me, but it wasn't about me. I don't know how many people... I don't know whether people get to have those conversations, whether their parents are in that zone. Like my parents had been kind of pack-a-day smokers and all this kind of stuff, and they found yoga before yoga was cool, and they got into that, and I think that I benefited from that. My brother and sister are way younger than me, and so they're kind of like, well, yeah, you got the you got the yoga parents, we got the angry chain smokers. Yeah. But just having somebody at home unpacking that stuff, and maybe they were both more chilled out as parents because they had done it, they'd been around a few times. So that for me, that's where it began. I was an emotionally in touch kid. I had a lot of emotion. Like my thing at school was I knew that, that moment where in a group of people and you're all taking the piss out of each other and it just turns on one person. And I knew that if it rounded on me with a bit of viciousness, that I'd go to tears. Like, I just had a lot of emotion inside of me, and I was just spending a lot of time trying to hide it and seem like a psycho, like that, because I was a little kid. And so that was my defense mechanism, seem like I was an angry nutcase, and then they would leave me alone. But the truth was, like, thin veneer. And so I feel like I didn't have a place to put that. It didn't feel okay to have that. Actually, it felt like the worst thing I could have had. You talked about strengths and weaknesses. It felt like this kind of kryptonite for me. And then when I was 17, I went to Nepal, and it blew my mind. Like, it was a school trip, and I was a pretty negative kid, real smart ass, always finding the hole in something and letting people know about it. And I saw these people that were just so full of life. Like, I remember seeing these guys skipping down grown men. I was skipping down the street holding hands, laughing. And I was like, what even is that? You know what I mean? Like, have you ever seen that in your life? No. But it was normal. And they were just happy dudes that were able to show affection to each other. And I thought something was up. I thought that people were being sus on the niceness that people were directing to me. I thought there was, like, are they trying to get something off me? And it took like a couple of weeks for me to realise that wasn't the case. These are just like good, generous people. I couldn't work it out because they didn't have anything. You know, like, we took over our old runners and that was like gold to them. And so they didn't have anything. Why were they so happy? Here I was at home, and I had a good, safe home to go home to. I had 3 meals on the table, and yet I was kind of shit-canning life and all of that kind of stuff. So it just cracked something inside of me. I came home. I wanted to change things. I changed my friendship group. And the new people that I was hanging out with, some of them I'd gone to primary school with, they were doing this reach thing, and that's where it kind of kicked off. I went along to this session that was happening in the drama room at Frankston High. And I thought they were going to be there, and they weren't. Turns out I was in the intro and they were in the advanced one. It was on a different time, and so I tried to leave. So I was like, fuck this, I'm not hanging around on my own. And this guy, Sammy Cav, who's now a really good mate, came up and said, where are you going? And I said, I made a mistake. This isn't for me. And he said, oh, well, if it's shit, like, what are you, lost 2 hours? You know? So why don't you just hang out? And it often sounds pretty stupid, but he swore at me, and so I was like, this guy's sick. Yeah. I'll stick around. And so I did stay, and it was the best decision of my life, I reckon. Like, the thing that I loved about it, I mean, it was started by Jim Steins, and I think because it was a charismatic bloke running the organisation, there was a lot of blokes that turned up at it as teenagers and in their 20s. And I hadn't been around guys that I would deem as what I wanted to be, which is a real bloke, but also able to shed tears, you know, openly, just sit there just crying, going like, this part of my life is fucked and I'm hurting and I don't have a solution for it and I'm feeling it, you know, I don't know what to do with it. And then in the next moment be bantering, taking the piss and, you know, punching in the arm and having a bit of fun with you or whatever it might be, or lifting somebody else up. And I was like, this is my jam. Like, I've been looking for this. And it was like when I was able to, because I had heaps of emotion, when I was able to express it, talk through it, people were responding in a way that I never thought they would have, like in going like, hey, like that, like you're a special person. Like that's amazing what you've just said there, what you've just done there. And I was like, oh my God. Like it's like kind of this is a weird example. I remember I used to run these primary school workshops and it was like about accepting difference or something. We came up with this story and it was like, you know, imagine if everybody was just blue. Everybody was like color blue and they were exactly the same size, exactly the same shape, and they had the same name and they would like literally exactly the same. What would that be like? And the kids would be like, oh, that'd be boring. You know, that'd be boring. You wouldn't know who like your people were. You wouldn't know who you found. You wouldn't be, it'd just be boring. Like you'd get over it. And it's like, yeah, I imagine if there was a planet like that and then they came here and they saw all the difference and what would they think? And they'd be like, this is cool. Like there's heaps of difference. And I think that for me, I felt like I had something that I needed to get out of me and get rid of, and I wished it away. I wished I was like the other guys. Like I had mates that I'd kind of held on to from primary school, and they were the ultimate. You know what I mean? These guys were 6 foot. They dominated the sporting field. They had the girls. They had all that stuff. And I just wanted to be like them. And I thought that I'd gotten ripped off. And then suddenly I was in this environment. It's like, oh, no. In this world, what you've got, superpower. It's epic. It's amazing. And you just happen to be built for it. And so I stuck with that. I was like, this is incredible, because I do want to be a bloke, and I've always wanted to keep that. I've always resonated with that archetype still of. I don't know why, to be honest. Like, I don't think I've ever really thought deeply about it. Is it because I grew up in Frankston and that was the mould of a man? Is it because that's always been innate to me? I don't know. I don't know where it's come from, but I like edge. I like kind of going hard. You know, I was talking before about how I've damaged my back and had a back surgery. Because that's just a part of who I am. All my mates kind of know that. Like, man, like you don't do things in halves. Like you're intense, you're full on, full throttle. But also I got heaps of vulnerability, you know. Like I shed tears often, you know. I got a lot of them inside, and I think like it's pretty cool to be able to marry those up. So that was the beginning of it all. Tomorrow Man, you know, popped out of the back of that because I was like, hey, there's something for young people, but where's the actual place for my mates from Frankston where they would willingly go to it because it's talking their language and it feels cool. It doesn't feel like a sellout, and it doesn't feel like a compartmentalized self-help over here. It just feels like, oh, that's just how cool would it be to live that way, talk that way with your mates, to be able to have the flex and range to be able to do those things. I think we've got a lot of research solutions around health, men's mental health, all of that kind of stuff. But I don't think we've got the marketing right. I don't think we've got the language right. I don't think we're making it look aspirational enough. And so I was like, I think we can do that. Like, let's create those environments that are just like, oh, shit, this doesn't feel like a lecture. It doesn't feel like I'm being told. It doesn't feel cringy. It just feels, it actually feels like a release. It feels like what you were talking about before. It gives me strength. It just releases energy in me. And then Tomorrow Woman, you know, Paige and I, my wife, we kind of went out on a limb when we had Riv 5 years ago and set up Tomorrow Architects and Tomorrow Man almost simultaneously. And Tomorrow Architects was paying the bills. It's a bit of leadership work that I've been doing for a long time. And Paige had always been really passionate about doing something for women. And schools started to come to us and say, hey, what you're doing with these guys is incredible, but we don't have an equivalent to give to the girls. So we're going to have to stop getting you here. And Paige was like, well, I want to do this thing. It's needed. And so Tomorrow Woman, you know, came about. Now Tomorrow People, just add another tomorrow. But Tomorrow People, like, to be honest, a lot of these, like, we didn't set out to start anything. If somebody had said to me, hey, you're going to have 40 people across these brands in 5 years, you just hit this button if you want it, hit this button if you don't, I would have hit the don't, for sure. Like, so daunting, you know, 40 people and, you know, a couple of thousand workshops across the country. It's all got size and it all asks something of you. But we've always made the decisions based on who are we to stand in the way of this. When Tomorrow Man, like Gussie after Man Up, gave me a call and he was like, mate, I can't go back to just the shits and giggles of, you know, radio after this. I love the shits and giggles of radio, but I need something more meaningful. I can't walk away from what I've seen. And so he's like, I want to fund it. I want to make sure that you guys are able to get more of these workshops, more people like you across these schools. And we knew that we had the capability to run good content and get the tone right. And so it was like, well, who are we to stand in the way of it? We weren't out there on a mission to do it, but now that it's happened, it's incredible. Tomorrow People's a bit similar. Like, I think that most people would agree the definition of masculinity is changing. Like, we're kind of rewriting the rule book a bit and flexing it and keep the old stuff that we love, but build new capabilities that have traditionally been no-go zones. Similar for women, you know, the range in what they are what's normal for a woman to do since the 50s when they're only allowed to stay in the house has completely expanded. I don't think we're having enough conversations across the gendered spectrum about how the relationship between the genders is shifting. And like literally them in a room going, how do we work out our relationship? And I've experienced that with Paige. Heaps of my mates have experienced it. Like, fuck, the mental load. Am I holding enough? And am I a patriarchal bloke without knowing it? And all this kind of, what is patriarchy? I hate that word. You know, a lot of blokes just feel allergic to the word. And so we're like, hey, we need to get in a room and talk about this.
Because that's actually like girls and boys together going through the stuff.
100%.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting because we had an episode a couple of weeks ago with Luke and Daniel Mancuso from Yaya Next Door. I'm not sure if you've heard of their work before. Yaya Next Door.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so they're advocacy for domestic violence, and their mother unfortunately lost her life at the hands of the father, and spoke a lot about those gender roles and how important it is now to like it's exactly right. There is no gender roles anymore. Like it's just working out what's best for your relationship and how to best have those conversations. And it was a really, really good and massive point that he said, because unfortunately some people still do live in those old times where they, unbeknown to themselves, might just automatically assume type things, but
for sure,
it's all about having those conversations and working out what is best for each other. I want to go back to something you said earlier though around range.
Yeah,
and you spoke about yourself, which is something that I really, really love about the work you do, and I think this is in terms of like how many so important things there are, but I think range and getting your definition on this and how we can become better. And just because we want to be stoic and manly doesn't mean we can't be vulnerable and comforting as well. And it's just finding your mix of that and finding how you best do it. Not everyone's going to do it the same, because I remember this, and I'm not saying this in a way to be like cute or anything, but I am a really emotional person. I remember even when I was a kid, I'd be watching movies and like I'd know that I was about to cry. Like I could just feel it. And I was like, I was going to go to the bathroom for a second. And like I'd just go like to the toilet and just sort of like wait for my eyes to like water down, come back. This is when I was sitting next to my sister, next to my mum and dad. And I was like, fuck, I don't know what to do here. So I'm just going to like pretend that I need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, 100%.
And wait for it to go away. But as I've gotten older, I realised it is a strength for me. Like it is a massive strength. And that doesn't mean that I'm, less of a bloke. And actually I feel like it makes me tougher. And then it makes when I do want to be, tough and strong, and I do want to have grit, that it helps it and it actually supports it. So talk us through range. Talk us through maybe how you educate young blokes and specifically young men in Tomorrow Man on this.
For sure.
And what might be something that like when you first go into a school that you'd sort of run the program, how would it sort of take place?
Yeah, right. It's a funny one. Like I'll talk about the school second and range first.
There's about 15 questions in that one. So just answer them all, please.
The range piece is about empowerment. You know what I mean? Like that's about me feeling empowered as a person. If you only give me one choice, that's not power. No, that's just a straitjacket. That's the only thing you can do. The more choices you have, the more tools you've got in your toolkit just to take on life. And so range is really about saying, do you have the range of tools, of attributes as a human being to live a full life? Or have you only been given like half the toolkit and you only get half life? So, all right, you got half the toolkit. You need to be strong at all times, invulnerable. You need to be, get it done. You need to be the guy that provides and always gets it done and never fails in that. You need to be the ultimate man's man. You need to always put the boys first, never the girls first. Just so you know, like all of that, like you just correlate with that with the stats. If you take it as a given and you never move out of those bounds, and you got a pretty intense life, and it's probably going to struggle because it's like a stick with no flex, like you put enough pressure on one choice and it just snaps eventually. And once it's snapped, how do you get it back together? It's really hard. So, having flex and range means, okay, when this gets too much for me, I might say, hey, I'm a man's man. I love this shit that you guys do, but I'm a man's man, you know, like that's just who I am. And you guys get up to that teary stuff and whatever.
Let me know when you
all good. Yeah.
let me know when you do this later.
Yeah, all of that kind of stuff. Like you can do that, but that guy might still get to a point where he's like, as much as I hate this teary shit, the whole thing's going to come apart. And so I've got to do a bit of this. I've got to come back over here and just get a bit of range and do a bit of that. I still might not define myself as that kind of guy, but at least I can go there when I need to go there for the health of myself and the people I love. And so I feel like range is just saying, like, the thing that's always, I don't know where this came from, but I've always just been scared of shit. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, everybody's scared of stuff. You're scared of going up to the girl you want to pash or whatever. You're scared of, you're scared of starting a podcast, scared of getting up in front of people, starting a business, whatever. Everybody's scared of stuff. The thing that always got me over that was thinking, I'm only here once. Like one life, one shot only. Now, other people have different beliefs. Personally, I believe I'm here once. I got one crack and I don't want to miss out on it. So I want to have it all, I want to kiss the girl. I want to, have my heart broken. I just want to do stuff, you know what I mean? Like, why should I miss out on stuff? I want to cry on my wedding day like I did and say, I love you. You're it. Like, this one shot I got, you're it. I want to do this with you. I want to rock a dance floor. That wasn't on the cards for a Frankston kid. You don't rock a dance floor. You stand on the side, you tap your toe at most, and you just hold your beer and grunt, No, fuck that. I want to rock the dance floor and I want to have stoic strength at the right time. I want people to know that I'm strong. I can tuck it up at the right moment. I can get it done. So I feel like, at the heart of it, what's not on the marketing or on the website and things like that at times is like no one should miss out. No woman should miss out. No man should miss out. And nobody identifying as everything else in between should miss out on living this thing. Like, we're only here once. Like, we should live it. And so you got to ask, are we getting the tools to do it? Like, do we have enough range? And so range for me is just saying, don't be stuck in a claustrophobic kind of one or two tools in my toolkit. Just have the range, the tool that matches up with the life experience. Okay, everybody's rocking the dance floor. Have I got this tool? Do I know how to be a bit of a dick and let my ego go and just jump out on the dance floor? The moment where I do need to be strong, it's definitely a lot of moments for me where I need to be a stoic male. And I'm glad I've got that tool. Yeah. Like when you're running a business and you got to pay the mortgage and you got 2 kids at home, and you're sleep deprived and you want to bawl your eyes out, but you still got to go to work. Like, sometimes you got to find that and then get home and cry. And I will cry on the couch at times. I'll say, I'm trying to find it in myself to do tomorrow. And my wife will sit there with me in that, and she'll hold me for a moment. Then next day I'll probably be holding her, and she'll be going, I don't know the way out of this. But then you find your strength and you kind of get back at it. So range is about feeling empowered, feeling equipped, and not missing out on life.
I love what you said then at the end about like being still wanting to be a man and being, those characteristics or traits that are perceived to be a man, because I think that that's something that sometimes we can lose in this factor, and especially when maybe people talk about this side of things, we over harp on the bit. It's like, be vulnerable, be this. It's like, hey, still be the strongest version of yourself you can be. You can still go out there and do everything you want to do and be the tough guy and like you said, support your family and support all these things. But no, you can be both.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
I love it. It's it's a great message. We need to clip that up. Was that the best you've delivered that? Because that was fucking pretty. You were on.
I don't know. I don't know what I said. I don't know what I said.
I felt like we're in flow state then. I was like, yeah. Cool. No, that was really good. Very good. Fam, quick break in today's podcast to talk to you about our good friends at Torrens University. They're absolutely killing it and they're doing really, really cool things. Torrens University focuses on rethinking education and delivering an experience that empowers, emboldens and instills confidence and curiosity. Torrens University courses are designed in collaboration with the industry, so every lesson teaches you something you can use. The world has changed, so should your uni. They're offering such a wide range of courses in business, design, education, hospitality and health. So make sure if you're looking at going back to uni, visit their website and learn more at torrens.edu.au. That's torrens.edu.au. The link will also be in the show notes. Check it out, fam. Yoo-hoo!
Or you said what happens how does that play out in the workshops?
Yes, how does that play out in the workshop?
Yeah.
So you go into the school.
So in the workshops, like, I mean, I don't know. We got heaps of different workshops. So the one that probably happens a lot that you saw with those boys, I mean, you would have seen that on Man Up.
Yep.
Out at Balgowlah. Like, those boys, Gussie rocked up at that, and I can't remember what ended up in the can and actually on TV, but Gussie had been on radio that morning. He was wrecked. He hadn't met me. Like, he didn't know who I was or what I did.
You hadn't met yet?
Nah.
Okay.
No, so we met outside the school. They filmed. Okay, yeah, you guys meet each other.
So can I just jump in? I want to put this into context because I want to give these credit this show because it was 6 years old probably now, 5 or 6 years old at least.
6, 7 years old.
This is really early in the stage of running these clinics even. Like the kids now that you're doing this with, they're probably 18, 20 years old now.
Yeah,
so it
for
would have
sure.
been the first time. It was the first time I'd seen something like this, let alone kids that age.
Yeah.
Just wanted to
for sure.
give that context.
So they, like, what had happened was that they were like, so it was Gussie's kids' school, so
Yes.
Jack, and they basically said, "Oh, can you get us a group of students?" And the school said, "Oh yeah, we'll put together a group of students, really nice kids." I said, "No, like, hang on a second, no, it has to be a motley crew. Like, it's got to be a mixture.
Yeah,
like it's got to be a mixture, not just the good kids." And so at the start of the workshop, I was just bantering with them, just like, well, I think we were talking about how shit my tunes were or something like that, and then I said, oh, you know, what's a bloke, you know, what's the stereotype, whatever, and they were throwing out words, and Gussie said to me afterwards, he said, I almost left. He's like, who the F is this guy? Like, he's got no clue what he's doing. These boys are running amok. And this is just a waste of my time. I'm tired. I want to go home. And then he said about 20 minutes into the workshop, the tone shifted. And he's like, a lot of those boys grew up in my kitchen, you know, in our kitchen and lounge room. Like, I know those boys, and I've never heard those things come out of their mouths. I didn't even know they had that in them.
What happened? Like what?
So it kind of like the start is banter. It's about going, what's a bloke, and it's not shit canning. It's just going, well, just what's the stereotype? Then what it moves into is I mean, with like in that workshop, we get nail polish out. We get a couple of guys to volunteer who go, oh, okay, who wants to keep bantering with us? And then a couple of guys jump up and we pull out red nail polish, and then they all freak out. And they're like, you know, like they're all taking the piss out of each other. Suck shit, you know, you got to put the nail polish on. We get volunteers up to put nail polish on both of their hands. And the whole thing is saying it's all fun and games until we tell the guys that have got it on, they got to leave it on for 2 weeks, and then they shit themselves. And then they get a bit angry sometimes. They're like, no, fuck off. I'm not doing this. Why? And they always say things along the lines of, my dad's going to clip me over the ear if I get home wearing this stuff. I got footy on the weekend. Like footy, I got training, I got footy, you know. I work at the supermarket. I'm going to get heaps of shit. Like, I'm at the cashier, like I'm a checkout dude, you know, I'm going to get paid out for this. And so we then ask them, well, why? Oh, because this isn't a thing that guys do. Who wrote the rule? Nobody can find who wrote the rule. And so it's just this moment in time of going, how many rules do we follow? And we're actually scared. We get angry if somebody tells us to break them. No idea who wrote it. Some person 50, 100 years ago wrote it. And then a lot of blokes will go, hey, what's the definition of a bloke when it comes to rules? And they go, break them. You know, that's the number one thing that guys say. Break them. You know, you write your own rules. I'm my own man. Nobody's the man of me. And it's like, oh, yeah, but you're shit scared to put a bit of red nail polish on because somebody wrote a rule. You don't want to break it. And they're like, oh, fuck. Kind of head blow up. And that's where things start to change, because it's like going, we're not saying that you need to go and break all these bloke rules, but just hold them lightly. Somebody wrote them. You don't know who did. So maybe question whether you have to follow them or you can walk your own path. And then we start to look at, if you follow these rules, have a look at the stats, and it's not hard to see how they end up. If you never learn how to talk about your emotions, you break down, you know, you break down. No one human being has all the answers to life. If you learn, because the boys in high school, you go, how do you sort your problems out? And they'll go, the stereotype of blokes, sort them out with your fist. You just get it done. We don't talk like the girls. We just get it done. And then your mates again. That might work as a 15-year-old, maybe sometimes. But it definitely doesn't work as a 30-year-old man, sleep deprived in a house with your wife, you know, like then it ends up in the most horrific stats we can find. So it's that kind of thing of just going, okay, if we blindly follow these rules and never break them, we find ourselves in trouble. And what they end up saying in the room is, hey, I can name about 50 stories of these stats. My dad, my uncle, my older brother, this is bullshit. If I care about these guys in this room, we have to change things. It's like, that's a no-brainer. That's not like being a holier than thou guy. That's just a no-brainer. If I give a shit about my mates, fuck these rules that somebody else wrote. You know what I mean? Like that marketing companies are making some cash off. Let's give them something else to market. Like, let's just change the rule book. So we got better lives, healthier blokes, healthier families, all that kind of stuff. And then they start talking about how the rules are already working on them because they're going, yeah, I know, like my dad's this stat, my uncle. I got some stuff going on. None of these boys know about it. And so when one guy shares a bit of emotion, they all go, shit, that was actually incredible. Like, why didn't you tell me that earlier? Like, I want to help you, man. How dare you not tell me about this? What, you've been going through that for months? We've been in schools, man, where kids heartbreaking. Like a boy just starts bawling his eyes out in a country school or in a metro region. He'll be like, oh, my dad died 3 months ago. Nobody knows. Just this kid's just been sitting in with it. And the boys are like going, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, how could you sit with that on your own? Oh, I didn't want to be a buzzkill, man. Didn't want to be a buzzkill. It's like, what? We're getting something seriously wrong. So the thing that happened in that workshop that everybody saw on the TV, and so many people have asked me after the workshop, Gussie said, mate, was this just like a unicorn? Like, did we just have the best all-time workshop and we caught it on camera? I said, no, that happens every time, Gussie. That's how much incredible life and emotional poetry, because it is, that's what it is. When these young guys start talking, the teachers often say, I didn't think they could talk like that. I've never heard them talk like that. That was so articulate, so emotionally in touch. Where the hell did that come from? And it's like, well, it's just hiding just below the surface. And that's the frustrating thing for me. I get pretty pissed about it because I'm like, we got a cure and it's pretty simple. It's just like genuine, authentic, non-judgmental environments where people can be a bit more themselves. And then you see all of this magic come out of these young guys. But because we work with all age demographics, I'm out there with 50 and 60-year-old blokes in machinery sheds and country town halls and footy clubs. And they were those guys. But they got so good at hiding it that at 50, 60, we're in a shearing shed and these guys start talking honestly, and you go, how many blokes in this room have ever heard a man talk like this guy's just spoken? And I go, never. I have never in my life sat with another man and heard them talk like that. And that's
It's heartbreaking.
50 years.
Yeah.
50 years I've been alive on this earth. And you talk about not missing out. In my book, that's missing out. That's missing out on genuine friendship, genuine support, genuinely being there for the other half of your mate's life that he never shares with you because it's not in the rule book. Like, you're like, that's just wrong. So we got to get it early before we get good at pushing it down, because these guys do find it harder to get to it. They're like, man, I've been doing this other gig for 50 years. Like, this is harder to get to. I feel like I missed out.
I feel like it's so important, and as much as we do talk about like the incredible work we're doing at schools, like how well our younger generation is educated on this stuff these days.
Sure.
Like, I caught up with people, I get messages all the time, and these young kids are sending me, I'm like, fuck me, man, you're better at me than this shit. Like, I don't even know how you even know this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why it actually really flattens me and makes me a little bit worried going, we're not worried, but actually there's an opportunity
Massive
for us to actually, the younger generation, to help educate the older guys in our life and our 100%. Uncles and our fathers and stuff. And, I've been pretty open on my story with my old man, and it took me to discover this shit by myself, not by myself, but like through, you know, workshops like yourself and having these conversations to then go to my dad, who had probably exactly like those guys, had these, never spoken about this before with anyone, for his own son to educate him on things, which is such a big space. And if we can, again, I know we're not just talking about boys and men, girls and women and everyone in between, but like we do sometimes actually have to think, hey, if you're a young bloke listening to this, you can actually be the parent in this situation. And you're probably way more skilled in this space than your parents are.
For sure. Yeah. I was at a 40th on the weekend, and this guy came up to me and he said, "Oh, you do that, men's health stuff, yeah?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we got into this conversation. He said, "Oh, my dad's never told me he loves me." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, I've never said it back to him either." But he's like, "But I'm waiting for him to say it, because it's a bit of a rip-off if I say it first. Like, does he really mean it if he says it to me?" And I said, like, the one thing that you get these kind of lessons by being out in these spaces and meeting just heaps of guys, and you start to see generational shifts as well. Like, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. And you can see a shift in the way year 10 is today to the way they were, 15 years ago. This generation has taught their dads to say, "I love you." Yeah. And when I say this generation of guys that are about 20, 30 at the moment, there's so many of them that have actually taught their 60, 70-year-old, old men to say, "I love you," because they missed out. They didn't grow up in a world where they had that vocabulary. And so we have said it first. I said it first to my dad. Now he says it every time we're on the phone. "I love you," He'll get teary and head to head, we're having a beer and he'll go, "I just love you," and it's like, wow, that's like, we weren't doing that a while ago, So we are doing that. Rivy, my 5-year-old, I was in the kitchen this morning and I said, "Hey, I'm going on this podcast today, Rivy." And he said, "Oh, what's a podcast?" I said, "Oh, like you sit down and you talk to somebody, what do you think I should talk about?" And he was like, oh, well, you can talk about what you're feeling." And I said, "Oh, yeah?" And he's like, yeah. Like, if you're feeling joyful, you can talk about that. If you're feeling excited, you can talk about that. If you're feeling sad, you can talk about that. I'm like, oh, my God, this is incredible. I was like, I haven't taught him this. He's like, where is this? Like, this is actually incredible. I said, and he went through like 8 emotions. And I was like, most blokes I work with don't know 8 emotions to name. And I said, he said, like, frustrated as well. I was like, "Hey, where'd you learn this?" And he's like, what's that movie with the emotions and the girl? Like,
do you know what that is? Inside Out.
Inside Out. Yeah. So he's like, Inside Out. Like, they've got all the emotions.
That's a very good movie. I have seen it.
And I was like, that's incredible. This kid's 5 and he knows all these emotions. The other day he was in the car and there's I was talking about it before we jumped on, but there's this movie, Red Panda, and it's just been on repeat in our house over and over again. And there's 3 characters in it. We're driving up to mum and dad's, and I had it on the iPad in the back. And Rivy goes, I'm not going to know the characters, but he was like, "Oh, this character's the bored one, and this character's the excited one, and this character's the surprised one, and this character's the angry one." And I was like, that's bang on. Like, they're in these archetypes. One of them's like, "Oh, yeah, over life," or whatever. He's like, "Oh, that's the bored one," And I'm like, it's exciting. You know what I mean? You come into life with that kind of, ability to have those tough conversations. Everything gets better. Everything. You know what I mean? Like, all your relationships, how you deal with problems, conflicts, sex, being able to say what you need to be able to realize when you've crossed a line, to be able to have intimate conversations, like all that stuff. Most of us haven't been given the training drills to have those chats.
I've realized, like, the last sort of 4 years the most too, with all these things, they are skills. Like, and I think it's the most underrated thing that we don't talk about the most. Like, no one is good at this shit.
No.
Like, no one is good at being vulnerable. No one is good at, like, expressing their emotions. But the more we do it, the better we get. And not even the better we get, the more comfortable we become. It's like, it's not like the first time you have to be vulnerable. You don't tell your deepest, darkest secret to all your mates. Like you start off by just asking people how they're going.
Yeah,
you do this.
sure.
And I thought about it like in terms of this show, for example. We, 2 years ago, I had a guy on, Dr. Zach Seidler, who works with me. I'm sure you know him.
Know Zach well.
And that was the first podcast I ever did on mental health. And I was like, oh my God, like, how are we even going to talk about this shit? Like, I don't even want to say this. Like, this is so fucking weird. I don't want to talk about it. And now I can't fucking say a sentence without talking about mindset.
Sure.
Like, it's just, you just get better at it. You get better at it the way you are. So,
for sure.
And the boys bag me about it a lot. They make videos all the time pretending to be me. Yeah. Anyway, it's such an interesting point about like these workshops that you do. It's just like that continual part, knowing that we have to sort of get better and keep practicing these things.
Yeah, and I think the practice it's really important to practice with live ammo, live ammunition to go, geez, my heart rate is like spiking and my throat's I've got that kind of tennis ball in the throat and the tears are coming and they're choking up how well I can talk. Am I just going to stop talking or am I going to learn how to talk through tears? Like learning how to talk through tears, that's up there in terms of life skills. Oh, I can continue to talk and there's emotion. Wow. And I'm still going. Like that's an incredible skill that everybody should get the privilege to learn. I don't think we're very good as a society at sitting in groups or in any kind of situation where there's multiple people with live emotion. Like we often go, let's just, you and I, come over the side and you and I just sort that out just one-on-one because that's a bit much. We don't need people to see that going on. And then, okay, so if every counselling session happens one-on-one in a closed room and then most people don't talk about it with their mates after, how do you learn how to do it? So like when you're sitting in like with your football team and somebody's working through something and they're emotional, everybody's lifting weights emotionally there. Everybody's learning how to sit in a room when the temperature goes up and the windows start sweating. It's like, oh shit, it's full on in here at the moment. Some guys, when the first time that happens, they'll go, I want to get out of this room. Like I wanted to run for the door. And it's like, well, you made it. You made it through. And so maybe someday in 10 years, your kid will be sharing something with you that is rocking you emotionally and you won't need to run for the door.
Because you've done it.
That kid's going to thank you for sitting in the room. There are these conversations, I often talk about grand final moments. I came up with this analogy years ago and everybody in our organisation takes the piss out of me for it. But it was this analogy of saying it was actually started with Gus. It came up after the workshop at Belgala. Gus and I were kept apart, and then we were brought together for the first interview after he had seen the workshop with his son. And one of the things he said was, every kid in Australia needs to have that workshop. And he said, like at least once. You wouldn't want to do it much more than that, but at least once. And I was like, I didn't know how those things worked because it was all cameras and stuff. So I was like, can I ask a question? And they're like, yeah, go ahead. And I was like, why once? Like, why only once? And he said, well, it's a bit full on, isn't it? I'm like, geez, that was intense. I was like, yeah. And I was like, but like I said, does Jack play sport? And he's like, yeah, he does. I said, so do you want him to train to do that? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, just once? And he's like, don't be stupid. And I was like, do you want him to train hard? He's like, well, yeah, or take it easy. He's like, no, he's got to go hard. He's got to find his limits to get better, to know what he's capable of. I'm like, all right, so you're happy for him to do that with sport, take himself to his edge, be completely fatigued, out on his feet, hit his edge, all of that kind of stuff. But practice emotion once, just once with your mates. That'll do it. It's like, it's not going to do it. And then you ask, like, there's going to be a grand final of emotion. So sometimes I'll say to people in a workshop, hey, what would you do? You're an amateur and tomorrow you get a phone call and somebody says, grand final tomorrow, the grand final, the AFL grand final, the grand final of your sport or art of choice. And you're on the biggest stage and there's millions watching you and you're going to be playing all the people that have trained their lives to do it, how would you actually react? And a lot of guys go, I'd throw the phone so far, like, deepest well I could find, I'd bury it. Then I'd just run for it for a few weeks, make sure nobody could find me and get me on that field or whatever it might be. Some people say I would break my leg. Like, they go, I'd injure myself, I'd wipe myself out. Why? Because I'm not ready. I haven't done it. I haven't built up under game pressure to get ready for that moment. And I go, we are all, you've probably already had a couple emotional grand final moments in your life where you've needed to have the emotional muscle to handle the intensity of that moment. And where did you train for it? Who trained you?
Didn't.
Where were the drills? Not only just weathering it, but who trained you how to talk in the center of that cyclone of emotion, how to put words to it? No one. And then your relationship's on the rocks and you're sitting there in front of each other and you're feeling all this emotion. Like, speak? I don't know how that happens. And so many couples talk about that. He can't talk. Are you going to say anything or are you just going to sit there and feel? And the guy's like, haven't done this before. No, I've never spoken with emotion. What is that? Oh, I've just got to start right now. And you kind of like, the stakes are pretty high.
I love that analogy. It's awesome because it's so true. Like, I'm 29 now. The shit that you're going through at 16, you think you don't know what's ahead of you and you don't know what you're going to experience, like the loss of people, broken relationships, arguments. Like, these things, unfortunately, are inevitable. Like, they're going to happen throughout your life. Yeah. The more that we can get ready for them, the better. There's been so many times where I look back and go, fuck, I wish I held myself a little bit different in that situation. I wish I did that differently. That would have been so much better. Yeah. But in saying that, the best part about it is like self-awareness and self-reflection and going, how would I have done it better? Yeah. Sometimes we don't get the time to train for these things, but treat every situation as being better for the next one.
For sure.
And I look at those situations that, I've done at the moment where, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I've spoken about with my old man, he went through alcohol addiction and having to have that conversation with him was like the worst thing ever. Like, it was so fucking hard to talk about. Brutal. But since then, I can talk to anyone about anything.
Yeah, okay.
And it's just like, it's not because that was easy. That was so shit. And like the conversation didn't flow. It wasn't good. It was awkward. It was mainly, just weird as conversation and bouncing around the subject. But since then, we've had to keep having conversations about that. And
I was going to say, what has happened since?
Well, it's just gotten easier. Weeks. Gotten easier. He's doing really well at the moment, but and since that time, but we've become so much closer. With ourselves, but having those conversations, even like in a workplace, like working with people, giving feedback.
100%.
It's so it was so unfamiliar, but you just it's a skill that you just have to keep putting yourself in it. And
big time.
I think like when you go through things, you go, oh, that was awesome. Like, learned so much from it. Yeah. But like the next thing's totally different.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You can harness things from it, but unfortunately, like, things are going to happen. Look at it as a growing experience and how much you can get out of it, because inevitably not everything that we go through as men and women are going to be positive. No,
and it's kind of interesting. You said, like, unfortunately we're all going to have those and just then not everything we'll experience is positive. But it just depends. Like, I feel like it depends the way you frame it.
It does. Because everything that I look at now, I've got one for you. Oh, so this is like, you can use this if you like it. It's about a young guy that said, okay, if you broke your leg today, you'd say that's pretty bad, right? It's pretty bad news. Yeah. But then if you went to the hospital, you saw the doctor, you met her, she ended up being your wife. In that 3-month period, you'd say that bad situation actually turned into be a pretty good one. You met the mother of your kids, and that's who it is. So that's the way I like to think about when I'm going through something that's shit.
What's it taking me towards?
What am I getting better at? And what's the awesome situation and something I'm going to get out of this? Like Nathan Jones last week said, him missing the grand final ended up being better for him in the long run, because yes, he'd have a premiership medal, but would he have this life experience and know more about himself and what made him tick in that situation?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I think that if you if you're only having positive emotions, again, you don't have range. It's kind of like I don't know, like everybody's going to have their heart broken, everybody's going to lose somebody, and there's something This might sound strange to say, but sometimes when you're in the middle of sadness and heartbreak, there's something not nice about it, but there's something like it's an experience.
Yeah.
It's like I know what it's like
You're
to
alive.
be there. Yeah, you're alive. For me, I remember being in Ireland, and I was over there doing some work, and I was heartbroken. At the time, Jim was really sick. I was losing a mentor. I was breaking up in my relationship. I was just wounded. I was like wide open. I was bawling my eyes out in the apartment, and I had to go to work. And I remember going down to get on the bus, heading into the centre of Dublin, and I was at the bus stop, and somebody started talking to me next to me. It doesn't happen that often. Somebody's just chatting away, and I can't remember what we said, but I was just talking to them. And then I got on the bus and sat down, and I was next to this person, and they started talking to me, and I was like, "This is really weird." Two strangers just having these kind of like conversations, and I swear it's because I was open, like completely humbled. Like in those times in my life where I've been broken open, people have been able to walk towards me and engage with me. At times where I'm dominating, people have often felt intimidated. I can't relate to that guy. Like what? And they keep a distance. Oh, he's too busy. He's moving too fast. Like I can't possibly pinch a bit more of his time. But at times where I've been broken out of my feet, it's often when I've had the best connections with people, where people have said, like, I feel like I can talk to you. I don't know, there's something in that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that you wish those things. I want to break myself, just so that I can have that experience. But being in it, it's like, well, at least I'm alive. I'm feeling something. I'm about to learn something. I'm going to be able to relate to more people. I'm going to understand a bit more about life. And then what often happens is it does bring about the highs. You talked about crucible moments earlier, or whatever we want to label them. The deepest, darkest moments often bring about our biggest highs, because how do you know what a high is unless you can contrast it with a low? If they're all high, it's kind of
it's boring. Yeah.
Blur. So, same stuff.
Incredible.
Blue people.
So true. What's next for you? You've done incredible things with Tomorrow Man, with everything you got going on, Tomorrow Woman, Tomorrow Architect, Tomorrow People. Where do you want to get to? What's like goals for the next 12 months, let's say?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do you reflect? Do you set goals?
I do. Yeah, I do actually. I take at least 2 days out, usually early December every year on my own. Get an Airbnb somewhere, and I go away and just block out life and try and reflect on what I want to happen next year, particularly since the businesses and all that have happened. Like, I reckon I respond to about 5% of the emails that come into I just can't get it to it all. It's just too big. So I have to, my year's booked out 18 months in advance if I don't get ahead of it. So yeah, I do. It's funny you asking that question now, because like I'm struggling at the moment in my life, in that I'm struggling with the size of it. I was on a call yesterday, and I was being taken through everything that needs to go into the diary over the next few weeks. And I was like, I said, I'm having a panic attack, kind of like almost like I'm freaking out. Like I'm going all blurry. I can't have this conversation with you right now because it's overwhelming me. And so I'm kind of in a moment at the moment where as a father of 2 kids, in my marriage, living up to what I want to be in my marriage, being what I need to be for the businesses, making sure that the bills are paid. It's just a lot. And I'm not loving it. I'm not loving it right now. So my goals are to find a place where I'm more present in my life. I want to sit next to my boys and actually be there with them rather than be half occupied with the 15 things that I've got on and going, I just didn't hear the 3 things that Rivi just said to me. Or I'm finding ways to occupy Augie so that I can handle the stress that's going on in my life. So I feel like I'm at a point now I haven't really said this, but it's just current for me. But I think I'm at a point now where I need to find a way to say no and to believe that hard work isn't the only thing that makes success happen. To be able to reinvest in quality and prioritize my self-care and you know what it's like. I do floats. I don't know if you've ever done a float before, but I struggle to meditate. I don't relax at all when I'm doing a massage or whatever, but a float, just that little black space and the salt's just like full stop to my body, and I come out just going like, oh my God, like I just rested, like I don't remember resting. That puts me back in my body, and I literally walk out of it going like, oh, I'm feeling again. I feel like I can have a real conversation with Paige or with my mates. Like I'm present. I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm responding. So I need to find that place more often, more regularly in my life, and I need to have the courage to actually say no. To say no, yeah. I think a part of me, I've always believed I work really hard, you know? Like I kind of believed that Jim used to say this about himself actually. He said, I wasn't the biggest talent. I played in that team with heaps of people, way more talented. I'd work harder than any of them. I'd outwork them. And that's why I got to where I did. And I've kind of believed that a bit myself. I was like, you know, short little ranger, you know, born a few, you know, with a few little disadvantages to getting ahead, but tenacity, like I'm tenacious and I'm going to go hard and I won't stop. I don't want to do that anymore. Like I want to balance it a bit. Don't need another back surgery.
So good, mate. It's such good self-awareness of where you're at. I think that so many people can relate to being in those positions of like that grind, that hustle, and you've obviously done that. You've put your workplace out to so many places across Australia, but to be able to sit back now and go, fuck, is this actually what I want? Because if we don't do it now, we don't at all. Like I say, like comfortably, I'm sort of nowhere near you are in that, but the same position of work, like it's taking so many different ways. Yeah. And you can, if you don't align with where you're going, you can sort of go, fuck, where the fuck am I? Like, am I doing this because of the financial thing, or am I doing it because I actually want to do? So,
or have I just become addicted to it? Yeah. You know, like you create stuff and it's great and it grows and it impacts more people. But have I gotten a bit addicted to it? You know, and does it, as you were saying about strengths, does it strengthen me? Does it really bring me joy? The thing that I'm grateful for and I'll never take for granted is we say in our organisation we stand on the shoulders of giants. Like Gussie and Gotcha backing us, like fiercely believing in us. There's so many people in different communities. Like when you look at the website, what you won't see is just the support, hundreds and thousands of people that have done things to bring it all to fruition, and that just blows my mind. Really grateful to be positively impacting the world. You know what I mean? Like more people should get to live their life, like simple as that. So I still want to be doing that stuff, but I also think you know, when you go and buy a product from somebody, you're like, oh, here's the fitness guru. And you're like, but they're not fit. Yeah. Like, what are they doing? Yeah. I don't want to be that. I do want people to be able to go, oh, yeah, like you do have a good connection with your sons. You are emotionally in touch. You know how to look after yourself. Because if the product's broken, if the person running it isn't doing it.
I feel like that sometimes as well with that like imposter syndrome of sometimes having these, you know, because I do these shows with people like yourself and other people, it's like I don't want people to think that I'm nailing this. Like I'm definitely not. Like I'm trying to get better at this as best I can. And what you're saying that like that analogy of the on the plane, right? Like put your own mask on first before you start helping everyone else, because if you're not in a good space, you're not going to be able to do that and impact other people.
100%. Or is that committed work in progress? Like nobody's perfect.
No way. If you think you are, you're fucking going backwards. Yeah, mate, you're an incredible guy. I'd love to get you, you know, back in and do some more stuff with you. It's actually a lot of it has just intertwined with like what exactly I need to hear at the moment, especially around being present at home and not just dedicating yourself to work and actually, being who you want to be, not just on the mic, but off it as well. So I really appreciate it. I thank you again. I don't say it lightly, like, you know, what you've been doing has a massive impact on me. And you said that, you know, if that was your goal, to have an impact on someone and say it has, like, definitely tick that box, because I'm one of those people, and I'd be one of many. So I thank you so much.
Yeah, mate. Thanks for having me on. I was pretty humbled to get the invite. I'm not a huge podcaster, but I'm aware of the work that you've been doing, and I've checked out a few of them over the years since you started it. And the thing that I spoke about earlier, like, there's not enough aspirational examples of how just an everyday bloke can find an entry point into this stuff. And I think a lot of people look at the people that just seem to have it nailed, like, fuck, they do it so well. Like, how do they do it? The thing that I love about watching your progression on this podcast is you just go at it. You know, you go towards the thing. You feel like, hey, we should be doing this. I'm going to get the mental health guy on. We're going to have an unfiltered conversation. It's not perfectly rehearsed. It's not, and that's what real life is like. You know, you talk about that conversation with your dad, and it's amazing the amount of people that I've heard talk about your podcast and about the way that they love it, because it's talking their language. It's practice, you know what I mean? Like they're watching something and getting an idea of it, and like it's amazing. You said that you were embarrassed, you know, by the first 20 eps, and now looking back, proud of it. It's epic what you're doing, and really humbled to get the email from you. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, there was a long time between it. It's about 6 years, but hopefully that from now on they can be more repetitive. But again, mate, an honour to have you. I really appreciate the kind words. And for anyone listening, make sure you check out everything going on. I'm sure you're going to be booked out for the next 7 years now after that, if you can, because you'll look after yourself.
Exactly.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers, mate.